Hello and welcome to Miles from Home, brought to you by Pro Direct Running. My name is Susie Chan and I'm an endurance runner for Mizuno. I like to run anything from a mile to over 100 miles. So you'll find me mainly out on the trails and out on the road with my trainers on. So today I'm your host, welcome, and we have picked the theme, Enjoying Your Run. Now, I don't know about you, but I love running, but sometimes it can feel a little bit intense and sometimes a little bit overwhelming. And occasionally I have lost my way and the enjoyment has gone. It's one of the most important things to be able to enjoy your run. So today we're going to have a chat with two very exciting guests who are going to give us their top tips about how to keep running fun. So with no further ado, to talk about this episode's theme, which is enjoying the run, I've got two very, very special guests. I'm really excited to find out what they've got to add to the conversation. Would you like to introduce yourself? First guest, Hannah.
Hello. I'm Hannah Irwin and I'm a long distance runner. I've represented England and I'm also a brand ambassador for Mizuno.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Hannah. I'm also a brand ambassador for Mizuno. You're a very classy lady. And our second guest is every runner needs one of these as their best friend. Andy, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Hi guys, thanks Susie. So my name's Andy Curtis. I'm a sports injury and orthopaedic medicine specialist physio. I specialised in mainly elite sports and have played a little bit of rugby in my time, so I know how to train as an elite performer as well.
Thank you so much, Andy. So a really great range of experience here, and myself also. I'm going to input a little bit into the answers. So the first subject I'd like to think about when we're trying to enjoy a run is setting a goal. Hannah, how important is setting a goal to you?
Yeah, so I think setting a goal is sort of one of the most important things in running, I find, because it gives you that focus and direction. It doesn't have to necessarily be performance focused, but it is for me. So it might be like an upcoming race. It really gives my training a direction because I know what I'm working for and what I need to be doing in those coming weeks. And also I think having a goal for what you're going to be doing in the future. So more of a long-term overall aim. It's sort of when you have those days where you feel like maybe your motivation's dwindling, you always know the why you're out there, if you're trying to get fitter or what it is, there's just always a reason for what you're doing.
Yeah, I find it really helps for me have a bit of structure to my training too, so I know where to place those rest days and where to push. But one thing I do try to do but neglect is cross-training. But we all know, Andy, this really can help us be happier runners. Tell us a little bit about cross-training.
Yeah, no, massively so. It's really important to mix up how you do things, otherwise you are going to potentially kind of overload in one area. Ties in with what Hannah was saying there. If you know you've got some weaknesses, you can design your cross-training around to take care of those. All your classic things, cycling, swimming, even sort of yoga and Pilates, trying to just mix it up a little bit so you've got a load of different ways of getting yourself fit, sort of cardiovascularly, but also not stressing the joints and tendons too much all the time. There's a really cool training method called blood flow restriction training. So you can do kind of lower grade training activities with these sort of blood flow restriction bands in place around your legs and arms, and actually you can train at 40% of your normal capacity with the same sort of gain and physiological load. So nice for sort of injury prevention, but also sort of hitting those sort of shorter workouts and be able to train on regular intervals without the soreness.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. I'm going to actually give that a Google. We'll get your details at the end of the interview if people want to find out more and ask you more directly about that. Now, one of my top reasons to run a bit happier is to run with friends. Now, Hannah, you must run loads and loads by yourself, but I do get kind of bored of my own thoughts. So for me, it really helps get me out the door. If I've agreed to meet somebody, I'm much more likely to get my trainers on at that particular time and head out the door to meet them. So that's my 2 pennies worth about how to run a bit happier. And the next one, now this is really, really crucial. I think we can all have an opinion on this. It's getting the right product. Andy, how important is getting the right shoes to making your training happy?
Yeah, absolutely vital. I mean, we know that a good running shoe will last you 300 to 500 miles, but certainly around the 300 mile mark, the midsole starts to struggle to maintain its shape between runs. that's only going to impact the load on your legs and make you not enjoy it anywhere near as much as if the shoe was fresh. The changing your shoe and getting the right kit is really important. Cushioning is also really important. So there's a metric that we measure runners with called initial peak acceleration. It's the type of loading that goes on your sort of shins and Achilles tendon. And we know that cushioning can reduce that load and therefore reduce the risk of sort of stress fracture and so forth. So there's a nice little tip there that if you want to increase your sort of enjoyment of running, change them regularly, but also look at the ways you can cushion without getting too bulky, because it will reduce the risk of overload injury.
Okay, and Hannah, do you have a favourite go-to shoe? Do you use different shoes for different services? Talk to us about some of your favourite products.
Yeah, so I've always raved about the Mizuno Wave Rider. I think I've only ever had one different shoe when I started running at the age of 6. And then that quickly decided that wasn't for me. And ever since then, I've always run in the Wave Rider. I use that for everything. So whether I'm on the track or I'm on the road or off-road, but then I do switch up. So for shorter stuff and speedier stuff, I've started using the Rider Neo. It's just a bit more lightweight, so it gives me a bit more of a spring. And yeah, I just always about the Wave Rider.
I know, it's such a good shoe. I actually got my first pair a few weeks ago, and I love it. As you say, it's a real all-rounder. I'm a bit like you. I like to, it's been quite dry this summer, so I've been wearing my road shoes out on the trails whilst it's been a bit dry. I think once you found your shoe, you stay quite loyal to it, don't you? And it's not, it's not worth messing around too much. Talking about messing around too much, the next one on my list I've got is variety. Now, what I mean by that, we've talked about it, Hannah, is mixing up your routes. Do you have different routes yourself, Hannah? Do you always go on the road? Do you do a little bit of trail to ease off? How do you put a bit of variety?
So, I always try to do sort of half of my running off-road, just because I've had a bit of injury in the past. So I always like to make sure that I'm running on some softer surfaces. And it's also keeps it fresh in your mind, and it's a bit more interesting changing the scenery around.
Yeah, I like to have a change of scenery. And Andy, would you vouch for mixing up the surfaces to run on? A bit of trail, a bit of road?
Yeah, hugely so. If you look at the impact forces, obviously the softer surfaces do help you, but then they do obviously change the muscle loading in a different way. So mixing it up is going to give you a variety of both ways of training really nicely.
Yeah, brilliant. And the next topic I have is something which I think that runners who are deep into their training programs can neglect a little bit, and that's rest. Rest is, for me, I am the queen of doing nothing outside of running. Andy, tell us how important it is to get the rest in.
No, massively important. I'm always describing this to athletes as active rest. And that, because it is doing something for you. You're not just sat there doing nothing. It's your time for your body to adapt and to recover. And also, it is a time to maybe just do something a little bit less stressful. So obviously, every time you go out for a decent run, you are raising your cortisol levels, your fight or flight hormone, which is great. Running can be stress relieving, but actually, if you have too much of that cortisol dump in your body, it can make you a bit irritable and change your mood and help not let you sleep very well. So that sort of active rest away from the running and just doing something a bit more chilled out, a bit more active in terms of stretching and yoga might be better for you.
Hannah, what do you have many rest days? What would be a typical rest day for you?
Yeah, so I've tried a few different things over the years, but I try and have a rest day every 10 days. I just find that avoids me burning out, but it's also long enough that I feel I get into a flow. But I try not to do too much on my rest day. I'm a very restless person, so I always feel like I need to be doing something. But I try and keep my steps under 10,000. I don't focus on it too much, but I just try and go for a light walk, and that's about it. Just get jobs done, but try and stay off my feet if I can.
Yeah, for me, my rest day, I'll walk the dogs. And then I'll do as you do. Actually, I'll stay off my feet quite a lot and just try and not sit on the sofa a bit and just reward your body for all of those harder sessions which you've put in. And actually, this actually rolls on nicely to the next theme we have, which is recovery. Again, for me, when I've done a big race, there's nothing like a good dog walk, a nice gentle dog walk, a bit of active recovery, but nothing too strenuous. Hannah, what do you do for recovery? Are you active recovery, or will it be about the nutrition you put in your body?
So I think a bit of both, really. So after sessions, I always have some milk. I I always try and keep it simple. So sometimes I put a bit of Nesquik in there just to make it tastier. And like foam rolling and stretching, and like in terms of like recovering well for my body, I always try to get at least 8 hours sleep. It's been veering a bit more towards the 9 at the moment, but I'm enjoying that. And then, yeah, just I find walking helps. I can't really just go for a steady walk with my dogs. It's more of a pull, but I find that it's still nice to just get your legs moving again.
And Andy, what would be your tips on recovery for people the physio?
So recovery, obviously very important. We were trying to avoid the sort of injury and the DOMS, the delayed onset muscle soreness. So, a gentle cool down straight after your run. And then, as Hannah was saying, stretching, foam rolling, really important. And also kind of the sort of golden hour, as I call it, or at least, straight the 20 minutes. You want to try and restore your muscle and liver glycogen a bit. So chucking a bit of carbohydrate and protein back in your body is a really good idea, just to sort of help aid that rest and recovery.
Brilliant. The carbohydrate bit is the one thing I know I do right for recovery, is making sure I eat pretty much straight after a run. Next on the list is something which is I put in myself actually, and it's about acknowledging progress. I mean, Hannah, I think as an elite, I think it's a different world from the sort of running which I do. I run quite a lot, and those benchmarks for me are not necessarily about hitting those those amazing numbers which you hit and the pace which you hit. But for me, it's sometimes about just acknowledging the fact of how far I've come in my running. If I've managed to get out the days I wanted to get out. I mean, do you have any tips for people about how they can, acknowledge how far they've come? Anything you'd like to share on that, Hannah?
Yeah, I think it's just important not to focus too much on like the small aspects and like always the future, because I know I'm always sort of thinking about what next, what am I going to achieve next, and I can sort of forget to think about actually what I have done. So I think it's important to sometimes just stop and look at what you've done, even like if it's the past couple of months, the past years, and just look at that progress that you have made, because you are more often than not going to be surprised at that. Whereas if you just think now, you see what you haven't done. Whereas you can flip it, make it positive, and think about actually you've done a lot so far.
Yeah, and I think people can be guilty, when they look on social media, you're always comparing yourself to other people and how much they've done. And if I look back and think, what I have done in the last couple of years, I think that really taking that on board for people that are running quite a lot as a hobby, never ever forget how far you've come, because it's I think for everybody it's a real achievement just to get your trainers on and just to get out the door. So the very last point I have, now this is something which I definitely want to hear your opinion on. Now, you touched on it a little bit, Andy, and that's fueling. So we can be happier runners by fueling correctly. Hannah, what's your sort of fueling? What would be your pre-race breakfast, for example?
So my pre-race breakfast doesn't really change much from what I do every day. Just because I don't like to spice it up. I know what works in my stomach. And that tends to be like a bagel with, I don't really like peanut butter, so it's usually almond butter and a banana. If it's like my race is later on, I might have a bit of cereal as well, but I just try and keep it simple and like what I know works for my stomach.
And then what about in the race? If you, you're not running for very long, are you? Because you're so blooming fast. But for me, if I'm running a very long race, some of the races I do are incredibly long. And for me, gels don't work so well in my stomach. I have to be quite careful about how many of those I take on board. So I turn to real food quite a lot. Do you have to take fuel on board when you're having those long training days?
Never like during training, because like you say, I'm never quite that long, but like throughout the day it's so important to make sure I'm getting enough food in, and if I'm training again later in the day, like I need to be fueling that, and I think it's something I've sort of struggled with in the past, but now I'm so like set on trying to like make it work for me as well as I can. And I just think you've got to get all that variety in and make sure you're getting all the nutrients and the carbs. I love carbs. So getting all in what you need.
Who doesn't love carbs? For me, it is like the bedrock of my breakfast, my lunch and my dinner. Andy, anything to add about fueling for runners from a physio's point of view?
I think the important thing to remember is that everyone's very individual. So what will work for one won't work for the other. So the stuff you guys have been talking about, knowing what works for you is essential, really, and not trying to change too much too quickly, and just making sure that you're getting it in before, during, and after, because the recovery and the sort of ability to draw on that fuel is really vital. So yeah, it's very individualized and quite an important thing to look at for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, my personal experience is it's taken me quite some time to get the fueling right for me in my races, and just because it's worked on one particular day doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for me again in a few months. So for me, it's a constant learning curve. So I'm always really interested to find out what people do and how they fuel themselves. So thank you so much, Hannah and Andy. And before I let you go, can you just let us know how people can get hold of you if they want to ask you any questions about what we've discussed today? Hannah, how can people find you on social?
So if you want to ask me any questions, go on to my Instagram. I think it's Hannah Irwin _1. I'm not sure, but I think it is that. But yeah, that's the best way to get hold of me.
Thank you, Hannah. And Andy, if people have got any questions, I mean, I've got questions after that conversation. How can people get hold of you?
Best way is to go to the yourphysioplan.com website and email in to help@yourphysioplan.com. Thank
you so much, and Hannah. Thank you so much for joining us today, and take care.
Thank you, Susie.
Thanks.
So to celebrate this episode, ProDirect and Mizuno Running are giving away a pair of their absolutely excellent Mizuno Wave Rider Neos. If you want to grab yourself a pair of those, then check out the comments box in the video to see how you can win. And so that's it. That's our top 10 tips about how you can get more out of your run and enjoy it. Did we say everything that you thought? If you want to add anything, please do let us know. Don't forget, we've got the competition. Check the comments below to see how you can win a pair of those fantastic Mizuno Wave Rider Neos. And also don't forget to subscribe to the ProDirect Running for future episodes of Miles from Home if you want to hear more. And if you'd like to know more about me, of course you do. I am Susie Chan, SUSIECHAN. Have a little Google. I'll be mainly on Instagram, there to answer all of your questions about running if you have any. Don't forget to check out Mizuno gear at prodirectrunning.com. Next time you need a new pair of trainers or some new kits. Absolutely brilliant. I can vouch for myself. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.